the findings in the paper basically show that in those 25 largest counties, indeed even in the 100 largest, we definitely have immigration building the Democratic vote share. Some of these other explanations figure in as well. Again, not everything is all about immigration, okay? But in these larger counties, including some places that you wouldn't think would have changed, Tarrant County, for instance, a Republican county where Fort Worth is located, Dallas County. Okay, you wouldn't necessarily think that in Texas, the immigrant population would have made a difference in favor of the Democratic Party. Well, indeed it has. Okay, Fort Worth is the more Republican of the two to this day, and yet it's not as Republican as it used to be. So the notion that the Republican Party, by altering its platform, is going to attract legions of Latino voters from one election to the next, it's just nonsense. And I think that we learned that it was nonsense during the Bush years, when very little progress was made, in spite of the fact that the Bush administration took very lenient positions with respect to immigration policy. What did the Latino voters do? They stayed with the Democrats. It's because they weren't really paying that much attention, and party ID is the central cue that people use when they go to the voting booth. So there's no question in conclusion, and I need to wrap up, that high levels of immigration have undermined GOP electoral prospects, but I would go further and say that adopting lenient views on immigration policy is not going to attract those immigrant voters that already have their party attachments formed. All right. Moreover, the independent Latinos are few and not highly attentive to political messaging. So it's unlikely you're going to attract many of those by changing your views in the direction of a lenient or generous immigration policy. I do think that over time, Republicans will attract more Latinos on their traditional positions, the positions that they hold, that they've consistently held, okay? Maybe they're not eventually ever going to secure a majority, okay? But Latinos will come, immigrant voters will come the GOP's way, okay? I think you can rest assured of that. And a lot of it depends on their progress up the economic ladder. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is, my advice to the Republican Party would be, don't switch your positions. Don't change your position on immigration policy. Don't change the position that the majority of your base holds. That's not necessary. Okay. Now, you may not want to go out of your way to antagonize them either.
Eliseo Medina is the vice president of SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, and he's an honorary co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America. And he said recently, talking about immigration, that immigrants, quote, will solidify and expand the progressive coalition for the future, unquote. In the same speech, he said, quote, that immigration will, quote, create a governing coalition for the long term and not just for an election cycle. Immigration isn't necessarily a defining issue for the Republican Party, because the Republican Party will continue to exist. If we continue on this path, it'll just become a rhino party that's sort of Me Too Republicanism, not just on immigration, but on everything else. Mass immigration will result in Rockefeller Republicanism being the only kind there is. But small government, pro-sovereignty conservatism will be extinguished by ongoing mass immigration, at least as a viable political force that has a chance of winning. Shrinking government is impossible without reducing immigration. The uninsured problem. Democrats have been riding this for years, and they have made a persuasive case for a lot of voters that health insurance and the lack of insurance is a serious national problem, because 45 million uninsured Americans, and then they change it to people, that demand action. And it's actually impelled it's given them political legs. It really is an issue that's gotten legs. Well, 1/3 of all people without health insurance in the United States are immigrants or their little kids living at home. The uninsured issue is an immigration issue. Not because most of them are uninsured, but 80% of the growth is from immigration. And it's half again bigger than it would be without immigration. Likewise, income inequality is increased significantly, the gap between rich and poor, by immigration, both because of the importation of a lot of extra poor people, and then because of the reduction in the wages of poor Americans. So the gap between the rich and poor increases, and so some reasonably conscientious voter who could sort of vote either way is much more pushed to leftist, statist solutions to redistribute the wealth because they say, wow, you know, this really is a problem. You know, Ted Kennedy and Nancy Pelosi and Barbara Boxer, they're right. You know, this really is an unequal society with growing inequality. So, boy, you know, it's against my better judgment, but I'm going to have to vote for, you know, this left-winger in this next election. Immigration never even occurs to them, and yet immigration policy has influenced the way they vote. Immigration moves the environment of a community as it creates a more densely populated community, moves it in the direction of more statism. There's simply no way to avoid that. Immigration is the health of the state. A precondition to shrinking government is shrinking future immigration, legal and illegal. And until we get that through our heads, we're going to be batting our heads against a brick wall in efforts to cut taxes and shrink government. Thank you.
We're a nation of immigrants that have prospered off of the central pillar of American exceptionalism called the rule of law. We should always ask this question: how many are too many? And if Linda Chavez is debating down the floor as she was, I would just ask her, you're an expert on immigration, what's your plan for America? How many are too many? If can we really let everybody in the world in? Well, no. Can we let 1 million or 2 or 3 come in every year? Probably not. Why would we be doing that? Is it because it's a relief valve for poverty? Does that make us feel good? Liberals have always thought that. They've always wanted to feel good. And look at the experiments that they brought forth. Look at the Native American reservations in America. They're liberal experiments. They're enclaves of socialism. They have so depressed the most independent people that this planet has, or this continent has seen. And that social experiment goes on and on and on perpetually. And they've replicated that in the major cities of every city in America with exactly the same results. And we sit here trying to bring forward the rule of law and personal responsibility and have our values promoted while we're being undermined by a constantly open border. How many are too many? Well, I can tell you right now, the ones that are coming are too many. The administration announced about a week and a half ago that they were going to be creating, this administration that claims they create jobs, 95,000 jobs a month. So, okay, how many is that a year? Well, 1,140,000 would be what that is. And we are providing, between green cards and other forms of legal immigration, those jobs to the tune of 125,000 jobs a month legally to legal immigrants, to the tune of 1.5 million jobs a year. So if the economy has to grow at the tune of 1.5 million jobs a year in order to keep up with the legal immigration, and we're only going to produce 95,000 a month. So we have a net loss just with the legal immigration and the economy as projected by President Obama we're going to be 360,000 jobs short, even if accommodating the legal immigrants that come into this country to work. They don't all come into work. That's the ones that come into work. Now, that's a negative equation.